Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here, and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we have my Game Week 5 team selection where I've got 2 free transfers, 3.5 million in the bank, but my team needs some serious surgery. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's waste absolutely no time at all today and jump straight into my Game Week 5 team selection. And as you can see directly above my head, that number where my rank is rather large, a little bit too large for my liking. And I've had a pretty rough start to the season. It's a shame really, because going into Game Week 4, I was actually ranked 1.1 million. I was doing pretty well overall, despite Haaland obviously punishing me every single week. Because Salah had matched him to that point and a lot of my other players had done quite well, I was feeling pretty good. But obviously last week, Salah blanked, Haaland smashed it. My team scored 24 points overall if you missed the video earlier in the week. So it genuinely couldn't have gone much worse. So I dropped 2.7 million places, which is maybe the biggest red arrow I've ever had. And I'm now sat at 3.8 mil. I will just say that goes to show how tightly packed the ranks are at the moment, and that therefore should mean that if I have a very good week coming up, that I can get a big green arrow, and that's the way that I'm viewing it at the moment. It should be a little bit easier, hopefully, probably famous last words, to get a green arrow, considering where I'm currently ranked. And if you look at my team in this video and you're watching this, firstly, thank you very much and do consider subscribing. You are probably going to drop a comment down below which says this team needs a wildcard. And in all honesty, I don't disagree with you at all. My team could really do with a wildcard. I have a couple of issues though. Firstly, this for me is not a good wildcard window. And I've said this a few times. I think you either needed to go in Game Week 3 or 4, or you need to wait until 6 or 7. And the reason for that is, from Game Week 6 onwards, I think you're going to want Man City and Arsenal assets. And because you're going to want those, and maybe some other players alongside that are quite expensive, you can't also keep a triple up on Liverpool and the likes of Trent and Salah if you also want a Saka and a Havertz and a Haaland. Like, you can't afford all of these players, as well as the likes of Phil Foden maybe coming back into our thinking. So what most people will do around Game Week 6 is sell one or both of Trent and Salah and start to pivot towards more expensive Arsenal and City assets. And that's probably what I will do. And so for me, if I'm thinking about what I want from Game Week 6 or 7 onwards, it's going to be triple Arsenal and Haaland and maybe a Foden or a City defender. But City and Arsenal play against each other this week. And then when I think there's a good chance that I sell some of my Liverpool assets from Game Week 6 or 7 onwards, well, they've got Bournemouth at home this week and Salah is definitely the best captain for me. So it just doesn't feel like a good exit and entry point for the players that I want to sell and buy in the upcoming weeks. So for me, Game Week 5 wildcard, unless I get a lot more issues over the next couple of days, which could happen, by the way, because I do have a few players that are injury doubts, etc. But I just don't think this is a good week to wildcard. I'd rather even potentially take a -4 hit this week if I have a few issues and just save the wildcard for a week where I feel like I'm wildcarding into the good fixture swings. So for that reason, I've not fully ruled out the wildcard, but I'm 90% sure I won't be using it. And then obviously we'll get onto in a second, do I bring in Haaland this week? And it's not that I'm being stubborn. I think people think I am stubborn, and maybe I am a little bit and I don't realise it. I know that Haaland is fantastic, but we saw against Inter Milan, and Inter Milan, by the way, are probably arguably the best defence in Europe, if not one of the better defences, and they kept Haaland very quiet in the Champions League. But Arsenal are also one of the best defences, right? So if they can keep Haaland quiet, I think Arsenal can largely keep Erling Haaland quiet. Am I saying I think he'll blank? Absolutely not. Not in a million years, based on how he's fallen at the moment. But do I think he'll go out there and get 2 or 3 goals? I would hope not. So I also don't think I desperately need to transition into Haaland this week. But from Game Week 6 or 7 onwards, I absolutely do. So I promise you I'm not being stubborn. I'm not that kind of manager. I just don't feel like this is the week to go and break my team to bring in Erling Haaland. So hopefully that covers wildcard and Haaland, because obviously there'll be a lot of questions around that when you see my team. And my team does need the surgery. I think there's a very good chance I do use both of my free transfers this week, but I equally don't mind rocking with a team that doesn't look perfect on paper. So, ramble over. This is the way that the team is currently set up. In goal, I have Henderson, a player that I am pretty desperate to get rid of, in all honesty. And if I was on a wildcard, once again, I would not have Henderson. Manchester United, for all that we say, they do create chances. Obviously, they scored 7 goals midweek, but that was against a weaker opposition. I would expect Man United to score in this game, so I'm not expecting a clean sheet, but hopefully he can string together a few saves, as we saw in recent weeks, and get maybe like a 2, 3, 4 pointer or something like that. But Henderson is not a player that I desperately want to hold on to. When I am looking at goalkeepers that I want, David Raya does stand out to me if I decide to go for a double up in the defence. Something like Gabriel and Raya moving forward could be really nice. If I decide not to go for a double up though, and I want to keep Gabriel and I want to go for a different goalkeeper, I do still feel like Flecken is probably the best cheap goalkeeper for me. So I think it will probably be Flecken or Raya on my wildcard in the next couple of weeks. On the defence, at the moment, it's Porro, Gabriel, Trent starting for me with Robinson and Greaves on the bench. I would love your help because I'm not really sure who to start here. I think most people would agree that Trent and Porro need to start, right? Trent, Porro, both at home, both very attacking. I wouldn't say either of them have a brilliant chance for a clean sheet here because I think Bournemouth are pretty good going forward. I know Chelsea just kept a clean sheet against them. Bournemouth should have scored in that game, really. And they've been attacking very well. The likes of Eva Nilsson, Semenyo, Tavernier, they've got really good underlying data. So I don't think it's a great chance for a clean sheet for Trent. And I think Brentford attacked very well. They had so many chances against Man City, but they're both so attacking. They're both good for bonus points. If they do keep a clean sheet and or get an attacking return, you're expecting a pretty big score from them. So Porro and Trent, I don't think people would argue with. I'm very happy to have the both of them. And even if I was on a wild card right now, I'd be tempted to keep the pair of them. So really happy there. And also, Porro's fixtures moving forward are quite good. Lots of people aren't including him on wildcard or talking about having him moving forward. But he's got Brentford, United, Brighton, West Ham, Palace. Like, I quite like those set of fixtures there. So those two are great. So then it's just coming down to out of Gabriel, Robinson, Greaves, who do I start? I've got Gabriel in at the moment. And that is obviously a little bit in response to the fact that he's just got a 15-pointer when he was sat on my bench. That was very painful. But I don't think there's a clean sheet for Gabriel, Robinson, or Greaves this week. Like, when I look at those matchups, if I was to predict the way that the games would go, I don't think any of them really keep a clean sheet. But then I think, well, Arsenal are just brilliant defensively. And the City versus Arsenal games are very, very tight normally. So I could foresee a clean sheet for Gabriel. So I don't think any of them really keep a clean sheet. Maybe I just back the better defence in this case, which is Gabriel. I'm then also thinking, and I do not recommend anyone plays the game this way, psychologically speaking, if I bench Gabriel, it's kind of like a win-win situation, I suppose, where if Gabriel keeps a clean sheet, I do not care in the slightest that that's sat on my bench because it means Erling Haaland is probably blanked. Whereas if Erling Haaland does what he does and starts scoring goals for fun again, well, then it was the right decision probably to bench Gabriel. So I'm wondering if psychologically it's like hedging my bets a little bit and I just start one of Robinson or Greaves. I'm not disrespecting the Fulham defence here, by the way. I just think that Newcastle, for all of their issues at the moment, they're always a team that I expect to score goals. If ISAK isn't available, which we'll discuss a bit later, then maybe it does make me lean towards Robinson. I don't think I'll be starting Greaves because despite him probably having the best fixture of the bunch, Ipswich are probably the weakest defence of the three. So I think it's probably between Gabriel and Robinson for me. I'd love to know down below what you would suggest on this occasion. And yeah, maybe I'll listen to you guys more because a few of you told me to start Gabriel last week and I probably should have done that. In terms of transfers in the defence, I don't think I need to use a transfer this week because I've already got this sort of slight benching headache where I'm kind of happy starting any of those three. Porro and Trent are fine. So really, the possible transfers in my team will be the midfield and forwards. So let's take a look at them. So guys, I just wanted to remind you that this is the final chance you have to enter the free-to-play fantasy football competition that Sorare are currently running, where if you win, you'll meet Kylian Mbappe, get VIP tickets, signed jerseys, and more. And there are lots of prizes other than just for that one person that gets to meet Kylian Mbappe. And you can scroll through. There will be a link in the description to sign up. Once you've signed up, obviously, that link will then take you to the competition, completely free to enter. But I did just want to show you what my current lineup is going to be for that final deadline. And the final deadline is the 20th of September. So you've got until the 20th to enter that final team. And just see if you can hit that 400-point threshold. And if you do hit that 400-point threshold, you'll be given a raffle ticket. And that enters you in for the possibility to win all of those insane prizes, including meeting Kylian Mbappe. So let me show you my team for the upcoming deadline. So guys, here is my lineup for that final deadline to try and win that raffle ticket, to give me the chance to meet Kylian Mbappe. And I've roughly stuck with the Prem again, but I have chosen two Barcelona players this time with Ter Stegen and Jamal. Jamal is very good in Sorare due to all of the actions that he does throughout a game. I've also stuck in double Aston Villa because it's a good fixture against Wolves with Watkins and Luca Dean, who is super attacking. And I will always pretty much have Bruno Fernandes as my captain in Sorare, because they get additional points for all of the other actions outside goals and assists. So Bruno Fernandes, even if he blanks in FPL, is usually very good for Sorare, and he will be my captain. So all you have to do is confirm your team then once you've chosen the five. And I think at the time of me recording at least, this is the team that will be going into the final deadline to, fingers crossed, give me the chance to meet Kylian Mbappe. And if you do also want to get the chance as well, like I said, there'll be a link down below to sign up to Sorare. It is 18 plus. Please play responsibly. But if you are 18 plus and you want to give it a go, click that link down below, enter for free, and let me know what your team is down below as well. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and I'm finding this a very interesting area in FPL at the moment, and that's because I actually don't really want any/many midfielders that aren't those real premium assets. Like, I've got Salah and Saka, who I'm very happy to have. I'd like to add a Cole Palmer in there for sure, and I think Foden will come back into our thinking. Even Son this week is great. And the reason I want to own those premiums is because they tend to be at least very, very consistent. But after you get those premiums or get one or two of them in, and you can't really likely have many more than that, I don't really see any midfielders that are just 100% brilliant picks in the team. I feel like they are all missing something. And let me know down below if you disagree. If you think there's a midfielder that has everything that you would want. I just feel like they've either not quite got the fixtures, even like an Mbermo this week, not a bad fixture, but not perfect, and then a little bit longer term they start to tail off, or they don't have the minutes, so players that are performing very well, but they're just getting like for example, Diaz and Jota, they're great, but the minutes aren't quite there, or the team's just not quite clicking, for example, Newcastle, or maybe they're performing well, but they're not quite actually getting the attacking returns like a Rodgers. I feel like every midfielder has got something that's just slightly not quite there that's making me a little bit hesitant. To the point where I've been looking at Game Week 6 and Game Week 7 wildcards, I'm genuinely struggling to select 5 midfielders. Even 4 midfielders I'm finding quite tough. Because I think for a lot of us, if we want triple Arsenal and Haaland, etc., we are probably going to potentially have to drop Salah, as I spoke about. So then if you remove Salah as an option, if you can't quite squeeze him in with some of the other options you want to go for, it becomes very, very difficult. So I'm actually going to take a look at the midfielders in a second and show you what I mean by that. But on my midfield, I do have Mohamed Salah. He will be my captain this week. I do think he's the standout captain, but I just wanted to say he's not the only captain. Like, if you can't get Salah into your team without taking a hit, and you were maybe looking to go without him from 6 onwards, maybe you do just go without him this week, because it is Bournemouth. Bournemouth are a middling to sort of top half of the table defence. They're not bad defensively. Iraola does set them up in a good fashion. And we saw last week, Forest are, by the way, really good defensively. And we've spoken about that for a while. But they did manage to largely limit Liverpool. So it is possible to go to Anfield and stop them from scoring lots of goals. So I don't see this as like a plum fixture. Everyone else seems to. I think Bournemouth home is good, but it's not fantastic. So if you don't want to captain Salah, by all means go for someone else. I think the issue is, though, that there's not a standout fixture to really target. It's not like, for example, if even Aston Villa had like a brilliant, perfect fixture on paper, you could potentially, like Ipswich at home or Southampton home, you'd go, right, that is the standout. There's not really another player where it's like, yeah, they're a really good alternative to Salah, which is the issue. So who do you have? You do have like an Ollie Watkins, if we believe he's fit enough to start, which I think he should be, and we think the minutes will be good. Wolves at home is great. You do have the Spurs assets like Son and Solanke against Brentford at home. You've got Palmer against West Ham away is absolutely fine. And Haaland is an okay captain. I don't think I would captain him this week, and it's not just because I don't own him. I just think captaining a player against Arsenal, it just doesn't feel right for me, despite how good he is. I mean, we saw against Inter Milan that good defences can keep Haaland out, or at least limit his attacking returns. So I do think Salah is the standout captain, I guess is what I'm saying, but don't feel afraid to go against him, because I don't think this is a fixture for me that I look at and go, wow, that is absolutely, you have to own and captain Mohamed Salah. But for me, he will have the armband. Jota is the other midfielder that I obviously have from Liverpool. I think he'll start again, but I think the reason it will start is just because Darwin Nunez clearly isn't in favour. But he did start in the Champions League, and I don't think his minutes will be above kind of 60, 65 again. So I have to now decide at this stage, do I keep Jota until I wildcard and just hope that he gets the 60 to 65, comes off, gets a return? Or do I look to move him on? Because I could just afford, if my forward line isn't as bad as I think it is right now, and we'll discuss that in a second, I could afford like Jota to Palmer. And I discussed doing that last week. I could do that this week if I wanted to. So I do have the option to move Jota on. But if Jota's going to get 65 minutes, which is what I would hope, I kind of feel like I would rather use the transfers elsewhere, because Jota for that period of time at Anfield, as the goal scorer that we know he is, it's not the end of the world. So I'm hesitant to sell Jota this week, but if we get some sort of rumour that he's unlikely to start, or I just think his minutes might be limited, then maybe I do decide to sell him on, and it probably would be for Cole Palmer at the moment. I do still have Bukayo Saka. The flag has now been lifted. I'm recording this on Thursday morning. Obviously, Arsenal play against Atalanta tonight. I'll have a better idea about his fitness. Unfortunately, Ødegaard is injured long-term with significant ligament damage. What that does mean is that Saka will take slightly more set pieces and corners, because Ødegaard does take the odd in-swinging, mainly free kick, but sometimes a corner. But also, there's always that slight risk when Ødegaard's playing that Saka gives him a penalty. I think he's done it on 4 occasions now, given Ødegaard a pen. Less so in recent times, but I guess those are the positives, that Saka is going to take pretty much all set pieces in swinging and also will definitely be on penalties. But the negative, if you've ever watched Arsenal, the brilliant goals and assists that Saka get is normally linking up with Ødegaard. It's not always that he assists Ødegaard and vice versa, but it's normally some kind of link up between Ødegaard and Saka, and then after that, they then finish the chance. So I am a little bit worried about how that might affect him, but not enough for me to say he's no longer an option. I want to sell him. It might reduce his appeal by like 5 to 10% overall, in which case I still think he's a fantastic asset to have. So not great this week, playing against Man City, but because I don't want to lock myself into a Game Week 6 wildcard, which I could still do, but I don't want to lock myself in, I don't think selling Saka this week makes a lot of sense for me. And we saw last week against Spurs, because he's on set pieces and because he's also on penalties, like he has so many routes to points that even if he doesn't get something from open play, he can get an assist from a corner or a free kick or a penalty. And I don't think City's defence is perfect. So I actually don't mind keeping Bukayo Saka, but I do want to see how they get on longer term without Martin Ødegaard. Next on, Eberechi Eze. Man United at home this week is a good fixture for attackers. Not so good for Henderson, but pretty good for Eze. He did get a goal and an assist against QPR in the Cup midweek. I think Mateta is starting to fire now, and Nketiah will make them a stronger attack too. So I actually really don't mind having Eze for the next couple of fixtures. Obviously, if you missed it, in Game Week 4, Mateta took a penalty in the 92nd minute ahead of Eze. So I've been saying since like 4 weeks before Game Week 1, Eze is great because he's got the minutes, he's got the penalties, he's got the he doesn't now have the penalties. At least he doesn't have 100% share. Glasner did come out and say that both Eze and Mateta are on penalties, which is similar to the situation we've seen at other clubs where you've got sort of two penalty takers that might take them. But Eze and Mateta are both on pens, and on the pitch, they'll decide who wants to take it. There is a pretty obvious clip where Eze and Mateta are arguing. It was taken by a fan, and they zoom in, and they're clearly having a bit of a debate. Mateta has the ball in his hands, and he just doesn't give it to Eze. Like, Eze's trying to convince him, and Mateta's just like, no, I'm taking it. Steps up and dispatches the penalty brilliantly. What that tells me is Mateta will not stand down to Eze, right? He's very, very confident. But two, if he's the one to step up in the 92nd minute and confidently dispatch a penalty, why would Eze take the next one when Mateta's done it so well? He also took a clutch penalty for France in the Olympics too. So I just think Mateta is clearly very good at penalties. He's very confident. I would be worried if Eze does take the next penalty. But even if he does, like he's now got, at best, a 50% share of penalties, which does reduce his appeal. So I think longer term, Eze isn't quite as good of an option. But as I've said throughout the week, he still does have the set pieces. He still does have the open play threat. He still does have the minutes. Everything that we said about Eze still exists. He's just lost 50% of the possible penalties that he'd get in a season, which might only be like 1 or 2 goals, but it does just reduce his appeal. So let me know what you think of Eze as an option now. But this week, Man United at home, I'm kind of fairly happy having him still. And then the fifth midfielder for me is Rodgers. Rodgers is just so frustrating and interesting as an asset because he looks so good every game. The minutes are so good every game. And when you watch, you feel like he's getting involved, but it never quite transpires to FPL points. And I've said now, I think it was on FPL Therapy and also my Game Week preview video, he's getting involved in the attacks a lot, but not as many of those kind of final actions, the final pass or the final shot. He's involved in the build-up and link-up play, but he has had 2 big chances himself, and he's assisted Watkins for 2 big chances. So if 2 or 3 of those go in, which you might expect because they are big chances, all of a sudden it's a very different discussion. And I think especially those assists, you would expect Watkins to finish at least 1, if not both of those. Just on his own finishing, I do think he snatches at chances a lot. I've said this a couple of times now. When he gets into the chance to score goals, he doesn't look overly composed. So I do wonder if his chances to get returns might always be there, but he might not actually deliver the points. Just temper your expectations, though, because the same thing applies. This is a £5.1 million asset. Like, what are you expecting from? If he was brilliant, he wouldn't be, well, from an FPL perspective, of course, he wouldn't be priced at that low price, right? He'd be up there at 7, 8, 9 million. He is priced accordingly. I know he hasn't got any returns yet, but I do think they are incoming. And considering the next 2 fixtures against Wolves and Ipswich, I'm not going to be selling Rodgers. This week, I'm probably going to have to start Rodgers, and I don't necessarily mind it against Wolves at home. So that's my midfield. Is it great? No, right? I've got Jota, who's probably not going to get very good minutes. I've got Rodgers, who's not returning. I've got Saka, who's playing against City, and they've lost Ødegaard. And I've got Eze, who's no longer fully on penalties. So when you look at that, you think, Ross, your team is a disaster, and wait until you see the forward line. But like I said, I don't really know who I even want from the midfielders. So let's jump over to the FPL site. I've ordered this by transfers in this round. So midfielders that have transferred in by most managers. Luis Diaz, I've got triple Liverpool. Smith Rowe, now's not the time. I don't think his underlying data's been great. His minutes haven't. And I don't think this is the run of fixtures for him. And Mbeumo's great, by the way. But with Wissa not being available, I don't know how that will affect him. And they've got Spurs this week, who, for everything people say about Spurs, their underlying data defensively is not that bad. Onana, just not for me. I've already got Rodgers. I might look to bring in Watkins, and he is a central defensive midfielder, and his minutes aren't even particularly good. 45, 61, 75. Like, he doesn't get 90 minutes on a consistent basis. Obviously, Palmer's great, but he's very expensive. McNeil is fantastic for assist threat. You can see here, 0.6 expected assist, but no goal threat. He has not achieved more than 0.06 XG in a single game. He's got no goal threat, but lots of assist threat, of course. Madueke's fine, but his minutes still don't look perfect to me. But he's probably one of the better options if I was looking at that cheaper price. Winks, Ahmad, no. Minutes, not good for Ahmad. Winks isn't a great FPO asset. Marcus Rashford, just a no. Barnes, no. Semenyo's okay. Actually, better than okay, but he's got Liverpool away this week, so this is not the time to target Semenyo. But from game week 6 onwards, yeah, he'll be very popular. But do remember, after Southampton and Leicester, Bournemouth have Arsenal, Villa and City. So it's not really a great run of fixtures for Semenyo, which was putting me off. Matoma's actually a really decent shout, and the fixtures I don't think are as bad as they look if you look at the colour scheme, but don't know, doesn't fill me with that much excitement. Garnacho just doesn't seem to be starting for some reason, despite being fantastic. Like, Bowen could do, but his data's really not very good, and he's playing a slightly deeper role this season. He's not getting as close to goal. Like, I mean, you could just go through. I don't like any of the midfielders. I'm really struggling to put together a midfield I'd want. Like, you could say my midfielder's not looking good. Do you know what? This is a good comment for you to drop down below. What would be like your ideal midfield 5? Let's even say from game week 6 onwards. Like, what does that look like? Because I'm struggling. Maybe it is like a Saka, Mbeumo, a cheap asset like Rodgers, and then you just take a risk with that kind of fourth midfielder and then go for a 3-4-3, like I said. Anyway, I'm not going to keep ranting about the midfielders, but that is my midfield 5. Eze, Saka, Rodgers, Salah, Jota. I think they're fine for now. I do like the idea of bringing in a Palmer or a Son, but as you'll see in a second, my forward line is a mess, so I think I need to prioritise that. So moving on to the forward line, and this is an absolute disaster. And I don't know where it went so wrong. Like, in previous weeks, I've actually been very, very happy with my forward line. But obviously, I started in a 3-5-2, and I chose not to have an 8th attacker so that I could have a stronger starting 11. So Cannon has been there since game week 1. He's just a £4.5 million midfielder. He's left the league. He is obviously an issue for me, given that I now only have 7 attackers. So that's the first issue. But I knew the risk that I was carrying by just having a dead spot, and that I might in the future want to change that. So I guess Cannon's not the big issue here. ISAK, I thought, was a brilliant pick going into game week 1. It's obviously not panned out that way. I think he was very unlucky in game week 1, given the 10 men situation. In game week 3, he scored and got full bonus. And in game week 4, against Wolves away and then going into Fulham away, I looked at it and I thought those are actually 2 decent fixtures. And I still think ISAK is brilliant. But then he goes off injured at half time in game week 4 due to blurred vision because the ball hit him in the face. It's been a bit of a disaster pick. And so now he's yellow flagged, and I'm recording this on, again, Thursday morning. We might get an update, in which case I'll cover it in Friday's video or in Saturday's deadline stream. But apparently he wasn't pictured in training on Wednesday. That hasn't been fully confirmed, but 2 different accounts that report sort of updated news and training pictures, they both said that ISAK wasn't pictured in training. It could be concussion protocol, in which case I think there's a good chance that he does miss out, depending upon which protocol it is, etc., and how much they have to follow that, and obviously the test that they run. Or if it's not concussion protocol and it's something more serious, then he could be out for even longer. I don't know if it was some sort of fracture of the eye you can get sometimes, but the ball hit him in the face relatively hard, and for him to have blurred vision and have to come off, that doesn't sound great. So if he's cleared as fit, I'll probably keep ISAK, but otherwise, he's obviously a transfer that I need to make because I don't have much backup other than if I wanted to play like a 4 or 5 at the back. So that's an issue. And then the issues get worse because Moniz, again, in game week 2, when Solanke got injured, or going into game week 2, I thought Solanke to Moniz was such a good transfer. Moniz had Ipswich and Leicester. I almost felt like it couldn't go wrong. And it has gone awfully wrong because Moniz has missed so many chances that he eventually gets benched in game week 4. Jimenez comes in, and not only does Jimenez come in, but Jimenez comes in and puts in a great performance and scores a goal. And then it gets even worse than that because midweek, Moniz starts in what is a second-string Fulham team. They've completely rotated their entire team, and Moniz starts. So I would be extremely, extremely surprised if Moniz starts in game week 5. And even if he does, I'm not necessarily sure that I would expect much from him. So I am now in a position where my front line is Moniz, ISAK, and Cannon. And this is why people are saying FPL Raptor, you're washed, because I don't even know how I've got into this situation. But a couple of weeks ago, I was really happy having Moniz and ISAK, and it's not panned out very well. So I probably am in a position right now, based on the info I have, where I have to take out both Moniz and Isak, I think. Or at least like Moniz and Cannon and bench Isak if I want to keep him a little bit longer. But I'm probably going to have to make 2 forward transfers. At the very, very, very least, it's going to have to be 1 forward transfer. I mean, that is exciting. I've got 3.5 million in the bank. I can literally go to any forward I want other than Erling Haaland. And so, yeah, that's a possibility. Some people will just say, well, if Isak's injured and Saka's got City, maybe use this as your opportunity to pivot to Erling Haaland. But if I'm looking to wildcard in 6 or 7 anyway, I don't know that I want to use 2 transfers to pivot to Haaland when I'm going to bring Haaland in 1 or 2 weeks anyway. I feel like I might as well just go without until I wildcard. So, that's the situation. Like I said, the team doesn't look particularly good, but defense-wise, I actually think I've got most of what I would want covered. Midfield, I've got Salah captain. I've got Saka for Game Week 6 if I want him. And again, I don't really love many of the midfielders. It's just that forward line. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have any of those 3 forwards. So with that in mind, 2 free transfers, 3.5 in a bank. Let's take a look at my possible transfer plans and some of the forwards that I'm looking to bring into my team. So guys, moving on to my possible transfers, here are the 3 forwards that I am considering most heavily at the moment. And like I said, it might be a combination of both Moniz and Isak that have to come out, or just one of them. I need to kind of wait for updated news and see how I feel about the situation. But it will be one or both of Moniz and Isak coming out. And then at the moment, it's Watkins, Solanke, and Calvert-Lewin that I'm currently considering bringing in. I think at the moment, I'm currently eyeing up a Game Week 7 wildcard more than Game Week 6 because it just suits my team slightly better, but I might play it in Game Week 6. So just because I'm currently leaning towards 7, I'm trying to view each forward as having the next 2 fixtures. So for Watkins, that's Wolves and Ipswich. For Solanke, that's Brentford and Man United. And for Calvert-Lewin, that's Leicester and Crystal Palace. So I think for all of those, the next 2 fixtures are good. I would say the weakest fixtures-wise is probably Solanke, and the strongest fixtures-wise is probably Ollie Watkins, but Calvert-Lewin's are closely behind. Now, the issue that I've got is that Watkins came off in the 60th minute in the Champions League and immediately put ice on his foot. Emery did come out and say that there wasn't an issue. He was just substituted as per any other player would be. It sounded like it was a planned substitution. And to be honest, players that have reoccurring injuries, issues, tightness in muscles or slight pain, they often will put ice on their injury immediately after they come off. It doesn't necessarily mean he is injured. It means that he's just nursing something, which we know. Ollie Watkins has a few recurring issues. So I will take Emery at his word there, that it's not a new injury or a big issue and he wasn't sub due to an injury, that it was potentially just a bit of a precaution and just him getting his minutes managed in the Champions League. In which case, that's fine. The issue that we've got, though, is that apart from in Game Week 4, where they were very clearly chasing a goal, Aston Villa, and he got 83 minutes, he seems to be getting subbed between 60 and 65 minutes for Duran, and Duran has been exceptional. So that could continue. Even if he's not got a new injury or a big injury, he might continue to only get 60 to 65 minutes. And if that was the case, I don't think I want to bring in Watkins for 60 to 65 minutes. I want him to get much closer to that 80 to 90 minute mark. So I do have issues and concerns around Ollie Watkins that makes him not quite as good of an option for me as he might have previously been. And he is a lot of money. Now, money isn't an issue for me right now. I can afford Watkins, even to do Moniz to Watkins. But just in case I do want to delay the wildcard a little bit, or I wanted to make a midfield transfer like a Jota to Parma, spending all that money on a player that's not only a slight doubt, but isn't getting great minutes, there are concerns. Because on paper, Watkins should be the obvious transfer for me, but it just doesn't feel quite like that. I still have some worries around him, but he's had 8 big chances in the opening 4 game weeks. So I think if I knew that he was fit, and if I knew he was going to get 75 plus minutes, it would be the obvious transfer for sure, and I would definitely be bringing him in. Then I obviously have Solanke and Calvert-Lewin. So on Calvert-Lewin, he's flagged because he was ill midweek. Lots of people suggesting that Calvert-Lewin, along with a couple of other Everton players, were just given a complete rest, and that Sean Dyche basically had to come out and say that these players were ill, and that is why they didn't feature at all in the squad, because obviously Everton lost. That is a possibility. It could just be an excuse from Dyche to basically give reasoning and justification as to why they didn't take their best goal scorer, at least on the bench, so that if they needed him, they could bring him on. But I also feel like there is some element of you might just have to take it at face value and assume that Calvert-Lewin could also be ill. Even if he is ill, he's got a little bit of time to recover. So let's see if he's pictured in training, etc. throughout Thursday and Friday. Let's see what's said in the press conferences. But I think Calvert-Lewin, based on him being so important, I think he'll be available. But obviously bringing in a flagged player for another flagged player doesn't feel great. Again, it feels like a bit of a risk. So in all honesty, if I had to make 2 transfers now, I'd probably want to do Moniz and Isak to Watkins and Calvert-Lewin. But there are doubts around both Calvert-Lewin and Watkins at the time of me recording. Solanke feels a lot safer in terms of there doesn't appear to be an issue. It doesn't appear that he's re-aggravated his injury. And I think his minutes will be pretty good, and he's playing at home. So maybe Solanke's like a safer bet than the two of them for now, but he's also probably my third choice at the moment. I do like the fact that he's not been scoring goals because it means his ownership is quite low. And other people aren't looking towards Solanke when the likes of Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, Vardy have all been scoring goals. They'd rather go there. And I quite like that it doesn't make him an obvious option because I think he is a natural goal scorer. And I think the goals will be coming very, very soon for Solanke. So that's currently where I stand in terms of the three that I'm most likely to bring in. I'll just jump back over to the FPL site just to say there are other forwards. So I've just made a little watch list. So Watkins we've spoken about, Calvert-Lewin we've spoken about, Solanke. I would just say Erling Haaland could come in for me. So do you know what? I can actually just show you that now, can't I? So it would be Haaland in for ISAK, which, again, it is a nice transfer. But then I would have to do Saka down to someone worth sort of 6.7, 6.6. So it could be something like a Madueke. So I have that option there for free. But then I'm forcing myself into a Game Week 6 wildcard because I want Saka back immediately. And I would only have one transfer to do it. And it wouldn't be easy to do unless I sold Salah. So I'm probably forcing myself into a wildcard there. So if not that, then let's go back to my watch list. How do I find it? There it is. Get there in the end. My other options are Jamie Vardy. The reason, again, that I'm not as interested in Jamie Vardy is because if I'm not wildcarding in 6, he's got Arsenal away. So it's Everton at home, which is great. I really like the fixture this week, but then Arsenal away. If I knew I was going to wildcard in 6 and this was just for 1 week, Jamie Vardy would be a lot more interesting to me. Mateta and Nketiah, but I don't know that I fully trust the Crystal Palace attack at the moment, so I don't know that I want to load up on them. I've already got Eze, and I know I say that you should try and consider them as individual assets, but I just don't know that I'd feel fully comfortable going into the next couple of games with double Crystal Palace attack, so I'm less considering that. Chris Wood's minutes have been so much better than I thought. His data's always okay, or actually better than okay. He scores goals, and he's got Brighton and Fulham. Like, Chris Wood probably deserves to be considered a little bit more for me. And then the only other one is Nicholas Jackson, who, again, has 2 decent fixtures against West Ham away and Brighton at home. I am still considering Nicholas Jackson, but for now, I think I probably prefer some of the other options slightly. I think that's it, really. I mean, you've got, like, Strand Larson for a cheaper price, but I think that's more of a long-term cheaper pick that you might want to go for. Could go for a Delap if you think that the next 2 fixtures could be good for Ipswich. But if I just chuck it back to my team, at the moment, the current plan is to remove definitely Moniz and probably bring in Watkins, unless I think there are major doubts around his minutes. And then it'll just depend. If ISAK is a doubt, I'll take out ISAK and I'll bring in Calvert-Lewin or Solanke. And if ISAK is not a doubt and we think he's going to play, maybe I either roll the second transfer or consider using it elsewhere. But for now, that's the situation. Let me know what you think of my rather terrible team and let me know what your plans are for Game Week 5 as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 5 team selection and transfer plans. I hope you did enjoy today's video. And if you did, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.